It's Peter Mead, and welcome to the Australian Search Marketing Academy, together with my fabulous co-host Nick Ranger and
Hey.
our amazing guest expert Olesia Korobka. And today's presentation, which really excited, it's such an important topic, is WordPress SEO technical issues you need to know. So I've had the pleasure of looking at Olesia's slides, had a sneak preview, and so really excited about this. But firstly, let me introduce your co-host Nick Ranger, SEO specialist at Studio Hawk. Nick's overseeing digital strategy, data analysis, content, site architecture for large and local enterprises and small business alike. And Nick is focused on data-driven results, technical SEO audits, researching user intent and finding opportunities in competitive industries. And might I add, from my own personal experience with Nick Ranger, she does a mind-blowing website migration for enterprise clients. So I just can't say enough good things about Nick Ranger. Thank you so much for co-hosting and welcome. How are you?
Golly gee, I am absolutely blushing. My head is going to be expanding out the sides of this frame. Honestly, it's fantastic to be here. And of course, like if you're tuning in, WordPress is everywhere. So many people use WordPress. A lot of people are considering to use this, or you're already, think about on a different platform. You might be migrating. Who knows? There is so many really, really great things that we can explore here today. And of course, I am joined by Peter Mead as the other co-host, and of course you're known as the godfather of SEO, and you're an absolute weapon when it comes to WordPress. Now WordPress is 30% of the web, and I think a lot of people have a lot of questions because there's so much you can do with it. It's an open source CMS. There's a lot of different variations, a lot of plugins, and a lot of vulnerabilities and things like that that also come with the territory. So really excited to get into it.
Yeah, WordPress all the way for me. And thank you so much, Nick, for also giving a little bit of an introduction to me. And let's move on to Olesia Korobka, SEO entrepreneur at Fagella. And Olesia is a SEO entrepreneur specializing in lead generation through different search engines, currently focused on technical SEO, image SEO, and research around application of knowledge graph in SEO. And she's also a networking connector. I have had the pleasure of seeing several of your presentations and your appearances in other forums, Olesia. I'm so excited you're joining us today and really, really interested in your take on what some of these common SEO issues are with WordPress. So welcome, and how are you today?
Thank you. Very fine. We have very good weather in Ukraine right now. Hello to SEO Bush Light. Not that much that I can add. I hope you like the presentation. I just need to warn you that I won't be able to cover everything there, but we'll pinpoint some issues that we can later discuss. Maybe some questions and around that.
Terrific. Yeah, 100%. Thanks so much.
We can never, sorry to add in there, like we can never probably go through and cover absolutely everything in WordPress. So this is a really, really great opportunity. We're on the panel with some, amazing experts here today. So make sure to post in your questions and we'll get them answered. Sorry, back to you, Peter.
Thanks so much. Well, Olesia, are you ready to share your slides and give us your presentation?
Yes, let me do that. Okay.
Excellent.
Terrific. Looks good. Thank you so much. Take it away.
Okay, thank you. So let's talk about some common technical WordPress issues for WordPress websites that can have negative impacts on your SEO. And I'll have about half an hour. And because of the time limit, we won't keep into the deepest details, but we'll still see something, you can target the issues after the presentation, and we can go into the details after that. I'll be happy if you share your experience in the comments or your thoughts. And let's go. So some huge numbers here. WordPress celebrated its 18th birthday recently, a few days ago, and now it's around 64 million websites that are using WordPress, which makes it almost 40% of the web. Why? Because it's easy to use. You don't need to be a developer or an SEO to make a website on WordPress, but at the same time, that may lead to errors that can affect your rankings in a way that you won't like probably. And my goal here is to help you build a stronger website or to fix it from SEO point of view and avoid common errors on the way. Let's also focus on the positive aspects. We'll have the direction where to look if you have one of the listed issues below. And I assume that this presentation will be helpful for webmasters who need to check if their website is SEO compliant, SEO wise, and maybe also for some coders, but it's not a full SEO audit, and I'm not talking about all technical issues and not all technical errors under the sun, but we focus on some most common one, significantly and specifically for WordPress sites. Some impacts are harder to prove. The factors don't work in isolation and they are blended together, so to say, and often fixing one of them is not enough to feel any impact. It's like the synergy of your hard work and fixing mix of factors. I'll also avoid naming any particular tool negatively and even positively, because things can change over time and I don't want to feel responsible for any consequences. But let's focus on how it should be working instead and what the best practices are. I've done a lot of research, as you might imagine, made a lot of tests, look at lots of websites, and however, some information, of course, will be a bit basic because the most common errors are often very basic. And let's go from the start. And the most basic thing is when you set up a website, imagine, and make this check mark in the dashboard for the search engines not to index your website, and forget to remove the disallow after that. So that happens sometimes. The next thing is to make permalinks at Robots.txt and Sitemap XML independently or with an SEO plugin. After that, you'd want to make some safety precautions by adding ways to back up either from time to time or automatically, manually. Adding security plugin is highly recommended and important if you are not a developer and cannot do it any other way. You should limit the number of logins. You should remove the admin page or make it inaccessible from outside, or leave it but make login unavailable from it and move login to another page. I also encourage you to create email alerts or telephone alerts or whatever is more convenient for you to get notified in case someone tries to access your website in a bad way. With WordPress API, there's really no need in using this file XML RPC PHP. I suggest you disable it in htaccess. In any case, don't move your htaccess to dashboard. Don't make it editable there. If your site gets hacked, you'll lose your rankings probably, and may have other consequences too. So this is to safeguard you against those. Now let's take a closer look at problems adhering to themes templates. No matter whether you are buying a template or ordering a custom one, it has to be responsive. Don't make two versions, mobile and desktop. It's not too common for WordPress, but sometimes I see that. Buy something initially good, do something initially good. If you are using some outdated theme, it's about time to switch to another one. And that also refers to duplicate tags inside the code, one for mobiles and the other version for desktop. It may seem responsive, but it has like duplicate tagging, and that's not good at all. What is a good theme? A good theme is easy to manage. It allows custom integrations, which you need. If it's not a customly designed template, it should have a child theme, good structure and code. When you are doing a speed check, look into the code. If they are not adding thumbnail or extremely small image into the source attribute of images, if they are not delaying JavaScript too much, because Google won't see that. At least how you can check another way. You can switch JavaScript off and see how the pages look without it. If they are not looking the same, probably you might want to refuse this template and use another one. Chances are that they are trying to delay code loading to win the page speed scores, but that is not good neither for indexing nor for rankings. You might want to check for code validation. You have the URL in the presentation that you can use. Specifically, look out for tags that are open and not closed, and vice versa, unbalanced quotation marks, and around structure. Service and decorative images with an ing tag and useful images without one. To see that, you should put the checkers for source, structure, and images inside the validator. Also important to know that some themes, they go with paid stuff on a trial or prepaid for 3 months only. And check that out if that suits you, because you'll have to pay for that to update or renew that. I'm seeing lots of test pages, example posts in index. People forget to remove data, lorem ipsum posts, and sometimes even reviews and authors, some generic media and other things that go with the template.
Do you think Hello World, don't we want to rank for Hello World on our website?
Yes. Some generic things like that.
Yeah.
Lots of things are caused by page builders. Some of them are very handy. They are very easy to use, highly intuitive, but you may end up fixing problems you were not intended to deal with. A bit more about bloated HTML later and speed and all that stuff in a few minutes. But some of them, when you make this page builder, some of them are very hard to switch afterwards. So when you build your website with a page builder, you may have issues if you want to switch. You have some of them are made this way that you have to fill so many details each time that you want to fill in something. Any content you have to build with each block, and it takes very a lot of time. And you may leave that half optimized because you don't check everything. And some of the builders have limited functionality. You can only do this or that, but if you want to add any new feature, things become drastically complicated, and you don't control fully those builders. Sometimes they go and add, say, figure tags to your tables, breaking the styles and everything for your websites due to some update. And you have to jump on that and fix that. If you are not a developer, chances are you're not, and don't read documentation, very few people actually do, with each update, you can miss that, and that can potentially lead to unexpected results. Thus, despite they help you to get around with design and everything, maintenance and some unwanted limited functionality may cause you some pain and unplanned workarounds. So for SEO plugins, you can use any SEO plugin you like, which is not in conflict with your other code, unless you have some custom solution, but it's kind of really rare for WordPress. Most people intuitively configure them well enough, and plugins, some of them have help resources and settings that can help you to configure properly. However, sometimes there are quite simple configuration errors that you should avoid. You should also not expect great results from following SEO plugins inbuilt automated recommendations inside the content as to the text size, some focus keywords, and so on. Don't worry about those too much. Don't rely fully on them. Sometimes they are a bit out of place, and following them usually not always will provide you with benefits. Often homepage SEO configurations are done from SEO plugin and override whatever you do from the page template itself. So check if it's not the case. Also, if you are not a local business, make sure that automated schemas that go with some SEO tools don't make you a local business, as you may get some ranking consequences if you are targeting national SERPs. If you want, of course, to be local, then that's okay with you. It's also important to enable and fill in all the fields for Open Graph. Search engine robots also use this information, and your site just looks better in social media. You'll check all the metas filled in, self-referencing canonicals and canonicalized pages. You won't need meta keywords, but most tools now switch them off by default. If you are not planning to use other solutions, you can switch Robots and Sitemap on. And this is a bit off top, but how many differences can you spot on the image on the screen? Because I can only see 4, and I'm sure there are more, but if you spot something more, please let me know in the comments, okay?
Yeah, perhaps Google can spot that better than we can.
Oh, but it's interesting, so I spent some
duplicate.
time. Yeah, it's kind of a bit duplicate. And WordPress is usually easy to deal with duplicates. You check if canonicals are set at all, and decide if you need to canonicalize or disallow or no index session IDs, other parameters, paginated content, archive pages. I recommend also not to paginate comments and some other sections of the website, as it's now easy to implement an infinite scroll if you do it right, of course, or even paginated loading and load content upon request. Just make sure that important content is immediately visible to Google. You can do this with the URL inspection tool in Google Search Console and see what is loaded with the rendered HTML there. Otherwise, you can always no index these kind of pages, like if you don't need them. Tags may also cause duplicate content if you didn't configure showing only snippets of your posts, but decided showing the whole text on the text pages. Yes, sometimes they do the same error with categories. And beside that, I sometimes see that tags duplicate categories, and there's same content in different categories or in between tags. It's kind of not a good error. It's better not to do that. Sometimes also the titles and headings, H1's first headings, are the same with the important pages or posts. You should not do that in any case. If you don't know how to optimize tags properly, it would be better if you just remove them for good or no index them. The same goes to WooCommerce. If you are using it, look out for tags and attributes you assign to your products, and make sure you are not creating a problem for your rankings. So if you choose to disallow some pages in Robots.txt, just make sure you're not disallowing them so that you restrict access to your JavaScript, CSS files, posts, and pages with the same words in their URLs, that you are not disallowing pages that are already no indexed. And the problem also with all the plugins and other solutions that create sitemaps is that you cannot edit priorities and set frequencies in a convenient way. Like most of them don't let you do that, they are not flexible enough. I try to use sitemaps where I can just switch those options off. It's not an error, but it's if used improperly, it will just get ignored anyways. If you need an image sitemap for whatever reason, just verify that you have that very image version in its best quality there. Google also recommends verifying CDN domain if you are using CDN to track any possible errors that may arise. Not always, not for everybody, but maybe you can. And if you cannot add your meta information directly to your image, you can add it into that sitemap, and it will be visible to bots. For video sitemap, it is beneficial to have one. You might need to install additional sitemap because most plugins, all SEO plugins, have those as paid features only, but there are a few which are free. Oftentimes, I'm also seeing webmasters adding sitemaps, something that they disallow, and in robots or no indexed pages, but that's when you just forget to configure not to add those, and you might want not to add tags categories and all those kind of pages too. Some common problem I'm seeing with developers too is when you change something on the website, in a dashboard, you install a plugin, you update it, do some change in code or else, check everything that it works for you, then you go away, maybe sleeping or something, and however you don't clear your cache, you may not be seeing all the changes sometimes, and it may appear that the site is actually down due to a syntax error, and it may be down for quite a bit if you don't check it very often. And to avoid that, make backups, of course, clear cache, and only after clearing cache check manually, and also set all kinds of alerts that would notify you in case of such an event. Also, I'm often seen in SERPs when you are looking for something. Most of WordPress posts, they go with date published by default, and some go without any date at all. That's rare, but however. So when the user is looking for more fresh information, your published date, if it was centuries ago, it may freak them out. So better you configure date updated on all your posts instead of date published. You don't need to conceal date published, but you need updated date in SERPs. And of course, if you are updating them more or less regularly. And there is no particular number how many plugins make too many, but excessive plugins will cause lots of issues themselves, that's for sure, including you need to update them regularly. They may and will conflict with each other, or even WordPress updates. They will create lots of code that you cannot control nor influence. They will make a mess most of the time, and the vulnerability issues are highly probable as well. So try to use as little plugins as it's possible. Try to code directly to your website and not use some third-party plugins that you don't know how they are and who they belong to and if they are secure or not. With having too many plugins, you will be having speed issues, that's for sure. So for this presentation, we'll be using Lighthouse report. It's generally very helpful for WordPress too. And one of the most common issues I see with page builders and all those plugins is that they cause the bloated HTML and the big DOM size. The official documentation talks about 1500 DOM elements, DOM nodes, but real numbers are below that. You should be trying to have less than 800 nodes, and if that's impossible at all, the next number is around 1400 nodes. I think it will alert you anyways. It's kind of many too, but good if you have a very big page. There are also various ways to achieve that, and it's totally possible with WordPress website. For example, you may try refactoring. If you have repetitive elements, and changing HTML elements can also improve loading metrics. How do we count that? We check that in the Lighthouse report. That's the number you should be working with. It will be different from the one in Chrome DevTools, and sometimes there's a leak in Chrome DevTools, so we'll be working with Lighthouse report for this number. How can you improve your DOM size? If you have the problem, you'll need to remove unnecessary HTML tags and plugins, of course, and using semantic HTML helps a lot. CSS before and after, lazy loading for parts of content. Another funny thing is when people copy their WordPress text, or not WordPress, but from Word Editor into WordPress, and it may generate lots of additional tags for styles that you might not notice. So when you add something into WordPress, you may want to clear styles to help in this situation. The next thing is cache. Many people, cache is like talking alien language, but you can just safely use any cache plugin that works with your theme and doesn't cause conflicts. You'll also need a working all cache button to clear that cache. And some major cache settings that you should check is that you don't cache get parameters. Cache is cleared when content is published or updated. That adding comments or reviews with similar data is updating the page. And don't worry if you are not using the recommended options. Some of them are not good at all. And you can set timeout to 1800. Some recommend setting to 3600, but this depends on your traffic. And we are expecting you grow organically, have lots of traffic. Therefore, you can initially reduce to 1800 or ask your developer. So there are issues caused by speed plugins that don't offer cache only, but also lazy loading or other speed enhancements. Many of them are paid plugins, but they cause lots of issues for your website. For instance, they may paste a thumbnail or a very small image into a source attribute, or they may add JavaScript to delay the loading so that Googlebot doesn't see the content at all. They can strip off metadata from your image. They can remove source attribute and some other minor issues. So if you are using or planning to use one of them, just check that. If you are making a custom solution, check for similar things as well. Since WordPress 5.5, native lazy loading is automatically added to every image without asking you if you need it or not. It's even added to the first image that is in the first viewport and doesn't need to be lazy loaded. So it comes into conflict with other plugins and often decreases your page speed metrics. Not always, but sometimes. Good news that if you need to delete it, you can do that with a simple stream into functions PHP file. Iframes can be killing your performance, and those include various embeds, including videos, maps, maybe some documentation, anything. Good workaround for that would be to use a thumbnail and a click event that initiates the iframe to be loaded upon request. You'll need to optimize the thumbnail as you would optimize any other image. Video object schema and sometimes video sitemap will be required. And what about those core web vitals everyone is talking about? Do they matter?
Yes, we all want to know. It's coming.
Do they matter? Do you really need to put your effort into that?
Yes. What's those little kitty cats? That's funny.
I thought those were the 3 core web vitals.
Yeah.
That's why I put them there.
There we go. Yeah.
So if you look into our scoring calculator, you'll see that some have quite a lot of impact on final scores for lab data. These change over time. For example, FCP and SI got reduced by 5% each. Some of them have not changed. And CLS used to be 5%, now it's 15%. You won't see first input delay here, it's field data. There used to be maximum potential feed previously, but it was deprecated. And in manuals, they recommend looking at time to interactive to optimize for feed. Google has publicly announced, and not once, that core web vitals will boost your rankings if done right. They are LCP, CLS, and feed. They are not providing with any thresholds though. Among those 3, which is more important than what is the perfect ratio, but they emphasize that core web vitals pass the signals that will boost your rankings if they are optimized properly. Thus, if you have resources to fix them, you'd better do. You just don't need to strive for some ideal number. Any part of, so to say, green zone in field data is totally enough. But it seems that if you are not a developer, you won't be able to debug and fix them. But you can track and control what is happening. And usually how they fix that, they create a JavaScript file that overrides some of the settings and makes it load better for the end user. It's very convenient to track in Data Studio. You can see the history for each page. Otherwise, you can get a good report from other tools. You can also use SEO Screaming Frog to consolidate data on many pages in one view. And once again, for that specific ranking boost, you use only core web vitals field data. Google search is not using page speed insights metrics, but some suggestions in optimization area of the report can improve some of the core web vitals as well. And if you don't have data, then you are left with what you have in Lighthouse report. So about some of the tags and matters, I've seen a lot of multilingual websites that are struggling with different plugins to manage content for different languages. And there's no really great all-in-one solution out there that works without any problems at all, but some plugins are quite good with their paid versions. So set href ranks accordingly. Canonicals should be self-referencing, and don't add those SCII characters into URLs. There's often a mistake when people copy untranslated content from one version to another, or make a 301 redirect from missing languages. Don't do that. If the page is not translated yet, it won't be and won't ever be translated. It should respond 404 in almost all the cases. Duplicate metas are quite common, especially with all those tags, category pages, and they are easily found with SEMrush, Screaming Frog Audit, and some themes somehow duplicate titles and code, making it 2 in 1 page. You might want to remove the second instance. One of my favorite areas is images optimization. The most common for WordPress users is to, when uploaded image, where the title gets prefilled with image meta name, whatever it, not meta name, but exact name, file name, whatever it might be, and alt is remaining empty. Even sometimes you add alt in the media library, but some page builders work in a way that you need to add alt again through their form, and some people don't know that it remains empty on the page. And often users also end up with duplicate alts on the same page, or just copy title into alt, which is also not good. And adding generic alt won't help you and your content rankings most of the time. So make sure that your alt is in line with what's on the image, and don't use IMG tags for decorative images. With WordPress, image data gets sometimes stripped off, kind of often. You'll need to check if it's there with your website. You can use IPTC website to check it online. Use this URL on the screen. For example, you'd want to see from all these meta tags of author, creator, byline are left. It won't be there if you have not added it prior to uploading the image. However, there are some images that can add it later, some plugins. And when you are using plugins that convert your images into WebP format, compress, resize, or process in some other ways, they usually strip the data off too, so you should verify if it's still there. I'm often also seeing things with that fitted image embed as background and cannot be indexed by Google and help your content. Edit by styles, don't edit by styles, just edit. You should use IMG tag for them. And also don't forget to add alt and source attributes with your best image quality referenced in source. Schema can cause you a lot of pain. Not that it is so very complicated, as it's highly boring. Many people try to avoid that, sometimes even successfully. There are some plugins that help you add schema to your pages, but many of them don't work as intended or have some limitations. I prefer custom code myself to be able to be flexible, but many webmasters give up and don't use it at all, or just copy it from somewhere and it doesn't correspond to what's on the page. It's very important that your schema data totally corresponds to your on-page content that Google sees. It should be also updated when you update a page. Review markup. Those star ratings are often the most problematic. People still add self-referencing reviews for local businesses who use aggregate rating inappropriately. I'm still using old structured data testing tool for checking the errors, but it doesn't point to every error, especially when it's nested, when schema is highly nested. Product schema won't be having positive impact unless you add offer or rating information. So oftentimes websites that really need to have it are missing person schema, which is very important for some types of content when you want to point out to a certain author or content reviewer, and you should add full author markup to the author page. Add every piece of information there, especially that refers to professional education, accomplishments, their work. Use short reference to the author on other pages. there's no need to duplicate all that stuff everywhere. Also, WordPress has inbuilt site search, which works pretty good, so don't miss an opportunity to add the site link search box to your results in SERPs, and it works good. HTML5 tags, semantic tags are a whole story, but I'll quickly add just a few points. Don't miss to add breadcrumbs. It's easy with WordPress and you get lots of benefits from doing so. Make sure you add them right. Other common issues most of the time include these tags. Figure is added by some builders by default to images and tables, and you might not want that, and vice versa. Often unimportant content is not added to a site tag, such as ads, for instance. I've seen navigation done with JavaScript and not HTML code. So there are many other issues, of course, but even if you fix all the technical issues, it doesn't guarantee you anything at all. You still need good content and links to rank. However, should you have any questions, and especially if you want to add some common issues, please do so in the comments, or you can DM me in any of the 3 ways here. That's it. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you.
Awesome stuff. Thanks so much, Olesia. That's awesome. All right,
Wow.
we got some really, really great questions off the back of that.
I've got burning questions.
Awesome. I think so do I. Shall we jump straight to the questions?
Let's yes, Nick Ranger, please. What's the first burning question that we can ask Olesia?
Awesome. Well, I think maybe Olesia, you also added one in there as well. But I think
maybe I will start.
I think
I can,
yeah.
because he said that Nick is very great at migrating websites, and the most common question also is how to do that properly with WordPress. So many business owners, they are starting to use some templates out there or have some website outdated or else, and they want to migrate to WordPress to manage it better. So what is the best way to do that? Maybe
what would your take be on that, Nick Ranger? Putting you on the spot.
Best practices for migrating websites. Oh my golly. How long have you got? I'll keep it pretty top level. I think like what's really important, just to sort of ask yourself, like, what kind of migration are you doing? Are you going to be changing the URL? Are you merging content? Are you redesigning it? Are you doing a brand, like complete switch? Or are you just adding an SSL and going from HTTP to HTTPS? Like sort of like, figure out what type of migration is really, you're talking about first. And then sort of figure out like, why are you migrating? Like, what is the intended goal? And then really kind of like have a good understanding of like what those risks are and what to expect. And I think really when you're looking at it, look, there's a couple of key things to do with any good pre-launch stage. So I would definitely want to make sure that your Search Console, that's all there, and you've got like good ownership of that. Big webmaster tools as well. You've got your tagging and things like that with Google Analytics and Google GTM, all sort of there and consolidated so that you can be able to put it onto a new version of your site. I think what's really, really important is to always just go and actually crawl the current website. One, it's just kind of good to sort of see what's going on with the site at the moment. And also just to have like a very static in time look at what all of your URLs are. You just never know when they're going to come in handy. And sometimes like some things go wrong. It's just so good to be able to have that on hand. So we definitely do that. A couple of like really basic things. Just canonical URL trailing slashes, make sure there's no lowercase, uppercase rules. Oh my god. I don't want to keep it pretty consolidated, but again, you want to make sure that you've got a good crawl to be able to see what you have now and to be able to plan out what you're going to have in the future. And if you're going to lose any of those pages, do some due diligence because you might actually lose some traffic and some keywords. Sorry, I've gone through site migration.
You've
literally.
you've said a lot. Yeah, it's never a perfect scenario, is it? But I mean, the more prepared you are, the better. And
planning is essential.
the crawling again, and then crawl again, and then when they have the new dev site ready for testing, put your 301 redirects in place and crawl the redirects and try and crawl those again and find any pages that are missing. Just keep testing and crawling, and then when you're happy, hit the go button, and then you'll find things that didn't get checked off.
Yeah, absolutely. Actually, something that
the more testing
you said,
you do, the better you'll be. So
yeah, something that you said that was really good. Yeah, something that
what would you say, Olesia?
Go. Just a few points that it's good to preserve URLs, and it's quite easy with WordPress because they are easy to configure there inside.
Things are a bit easier.
100%. Do you like to do like your redirects via plugin or by HT access, Olesia?
HT access.
Yeah.
Never plugin.
It's so much easier. It's quick. It's efficient. Yeah, I like it too.
And it's easier for migrating.
I'll ask the next question, Olesia, because actually I'll just say Donovan here has asked, is there a page builder plugin that you would recommend or not for performance, especially? Now, this seems to be a really popular question. We get in all kinds of forums from different people. The question goes on to be, I find them hard to optimize, bloated JS libraries, etc. Caching helps, but still trying to find a fast one. And of course, so many websites, WordPress sites we work on, there's Elementor, there's other kinds of page builders, maybe even just WordPress Gutenberg, people using blocks and things like that. So what would your, can we make it faster? Can we remove the bloat? What can we do, Olesia?
I don't use page builders myself, or try to avoid using them at all. But if you have to, you just choose the one you like most of all, which is more convenient for you. You can rewrite the code after that. I don't see any other solution. So you'll create some files, JavaScript files or other files, PHP files, that will override what these, because those page builders, they are plugins. So you'll need to override something they are doing wrong and make it better. Just contact someone who can help you with that. But usually I don't recommend using that.
Yeah, awesome. And I guess that leads it really, really quite naturally to a sort of adjacent question around themes. Like what sort of themes that you like that you've seen that are really quite lovely and responsive?
But that depends on the type of business you are managing, because like themes are usually focused on something. There are themes for services. Is it a shop, e-commerce, or something like that? The same as with any builders. So you just check if they are doing right, and you have this in slides. You can verify that they are working properly and choose the one which is better. But they change over time. Sometimes you see some very nicely looking theme and it works not really good, but then developers jump in and they really make it much better. But sometimes, moreover, what I find that the custom-made theme is working much better usually than those generic templates on some markets.
Yeah, 100%. Like a lot of the time, those sort of generic ones will just have boilerplate type template content, and it'll just be like, if you want to make a new page, you have to use that boilerplate, and then just
because they
it
try
just
to please
all the
everyone.
same.
They try to please everyone. They need more people who buy it, and they try to make it good looking for everyone. So they are also limited with what they can do.
What's this next question here from Ramesh? He says, how do you manage pagination on a homepage where the last articles are getting featured? These pagination goes beyond 10 or 20, etc. I mean, I guess there's a bigger question about pagination here in general, but for example, this particular question is really talking about if you had articles on a homepage, would that be the best way to do it, or would you think of maybe restructuring? I mean, we know that especially blog posts, they do tend to get buried over time, and that's just the nature of that. But maybe take a different approach. Think about restructuring, and think about maybe perhaps the structure. Think about it from a content hub point of view. Sorry, what would you say, Olesia?
Content hub is a very good approach. I like that too. I try not to paginate homepage. It can create lots of issues. If you can make a good infinite scroll or paginate the parts of the content that appear on the same page and upload them upon request, when user has to click the button to upload more blog posts. And you can also encourage users to go into categories. So most of the users don't want to browse all those hundreds of blog posts. They want to find something they really need. So you just go from the user point of view and give them an easy solution for them to find with filters or with categories or with even tags, whatever is better for the user. So go from the user and you'll have some solution either with infinite scroll or with filtering the results.
Yeah, nice.
What have you got for us? No, yeah. Pagination is, of course, yes, we know that Google said that they don't treat pagination the same way anymore in general.
They can ignore it.
Yeah, maybe ignore it. Maybe you can still signal to Google what's on your second, third, and fourth page. But what have you got for us, Nick? Have you got a question for Olesia?
Yeah, I do. I think what was that render blocking question? I'm just sort of scrolling around. There we are. So Toolkits ROL has asked that his biggest issue is to eliminate render blocking resources when clients use themes purchased via the web. He works with small businesses and they often have very limited budgets. This is a great question. We'd love to hear your thoughts. Got a lot of thoughts of my own too.
I need to think about that. Very limited is how much limited it can be, like no budget at all.
Yeah, that's tough.
Yeah, of course, it's complicated, isn't it? But and I guess that your render blocking resources, that kind of thing, other than getting into the code and setting the load order of some of those resources, maybe also have a look at your theme and whether the page builder is adding on ridiculous extra JavaScripts and things, and see if you can defer the loading of some of those resources. But specifically, it's a very case by case, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's different for every website, and sometimes within one website there are different instances on different pages, types and posts. So it's like debugging question more.
Well, I think it's really interesting because like when it's going through and crawling, it's crawling from top to bottom. So a lot of some developers sort of consider to like move those tags to the bottom. That's sort of like an easier way of like being able to fix that. Whereas like I think sometimes like more the advanced way is like to add those like asynchronous or like defer the actual attributes. So making sure that the fix is final by taking any non-critical scripts and links and tags to be able to make sure that like they're accompanied with those asynchronous or deferred attributes. So I think if you don't have like a lot of budgets, I know like a lot of people do like to trial out like WP Rocket because that minifies a lot of their CSS files and combines them and loads the CSS only needed to be visible for that part of the website. So maybe that could affect some ways, and especially if you're just a little bit more budget conscious, that could be something. But again, I think, in terms of all the things that you can do to be able to optimize your site, priority, really just kind of consider, like, there might be some other things that might help you more in the long run.
Yeah, maybe using some plugins will be an available solution here when you have very tight and budgeted and cannot debug manually because no resources for that.
Listen, Olesia, I would like to know. I often get people asking me, "Hey, Peter, can I pick your brain for a minute?" And I just feel like saying that to you. Yeah, I feel like saying that to you, Olesia. Can I pick your brain for a minute? Because you had some slides about the Core Web Vitals, and we know this has got to do with page speed and the web and the page experience update. What is your crystal ball say to you that's going to happen? Do we need to be as worried about this, or are we just thinking that it could be another Mobilegeddon?
I think that it's a bit overestimated at the moment because it sounds like very technical, and many people, they do their ordinary business and ordinary job, and that sounds so very complicated for them that they become nervous and scared. But really, those are just three metrics: LCP, CLS, and feed. And they are field data, and they are quite easy to debug and quite easy to fix, actually. You have all the resources for that. But I don't think their impact is so very big. And Google also said not once that you won't, even if you have a very fast website, but everything else is not optimized, you won't be high in rankings that pages that are more relevant to the query, so to say. So you have relevant content, and only after that you worry about all the minor issues, which are speed issues. And Google doesn't look at the page speed in sites. Those are more for debugging, so they are not using these metrics all there. But they help you to make your site faster and to fix all those core web vitals too. And yesterday, or the day before yesterday, Google also said that they are no longer crawling Ajax. So it can be an issue for most of the websites in terms of speed and render the HTML.
Yeah, I mean, there was a time a while ago where we just went nuts over speed and speeding up websites. But actually, Nick Ranger, just before the webinar, you and I were talking a little bit about, and not just before today, but in previous times, we've talked about WordPress and the appropriate use of WordPress. And perhaps some people who are talking maybe from large enterprise type of websites, maybe big retailers who maybe don't think that WooCommerce will do the job for them, or maybe large content websites, publishers who are deciding not to use WordPress. I don't know. Do you have a question do you want to put that question to Olesia, and maybe in your own words, because I found it very interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. And so do I. And maybe this is something less like a question and more like a bit of like a quick round table discussion as to larger enterprise level sites, or even just sites that are able to grow and to be able to expand in functionality on just that one WordPress CMS. I've got a pretty massive client. And when I say that, like, they're sort of like almost in the 500,000 to 750, sort of 750,000 like users per month sort of like range of clients, and they don't have that many issues with the scalability. If anything, it allows them a lot of flexibility and a lot of ability to be able to have more ability for functionality like across their site. And I think if anything, like the challenge there is just kind of keeping them in reins with what they can do, and not to go too crazy on the JavaScript. Because really wanting to make sure that things are server-side rendered. So again, like I see a lot of great flexibility and things like that, but I think one thing that I think with WooCommerce, which you brought up, can sometimes be a little bit challenging for some people just doing the tracking, the setup and things like that. Whereas maybe something like if you're on an e-commerce platform, Shopify does make it pretty easy for those kinds of things to have that transparency. Yeah, absolutely. Those out of box things.
So maybe there's more groundwork needs to be done, setting things up and building things. What's your take on this, Olesia? Do you see a scenario where you just would not bother using WordPress? What do you think?
I would not use WooCommerce. I'd use something else for the e-commerce sites. So yes, that's kind of that scenario. And WordPress is so very convenient and for most industries and for franchisees, and it's like you can have the same template for many of instances. But it just works great for me most of the time.
Yeah.
And they are making it, I think they are making it better. So they are.
Yeah.
And maybe some very big websites won't use it. Some maybe news websites, but good choice for me. Most of them. I know many big companies that are not using WordPress for their core website, but they are using it for blog part separately because it allows you to install it separately, and it's quite convenient as well.
Okay. Well, look, we're getting close to the end of the webinar, and one thing that I like doing now and again is asking for your quick takeaway. If there was one thing that our viewers today could do, just one thing they could do to improve their SEO and to fix those technical WordPress SEO issues, Nick Ranger, maybe I'll throw it over to you first, and then go across to Olesia. What would be your little 1 minute takeaway for our viewers today?
Yeah, sure. So I think we're, especially with WordPress, I always like to look in and be able to trim the fat wherever I can. So Yoast is a really, really common plugin that a lot of people use on WordPress because it automates Robots.txt, Sitemap, and a host of other really, really great goodies. I just go in to the Yoast and to the taxonomies and things like that, and just kind of like trim the fat, get rid of all those tag pages, get rid of the category pages, get rid of archive pages, and some other fairly innocuous things that it kind of just auto generates and adds to your sitemap. Again, if you want to build out those pages and make it really, really great, it's a nice little thing to be able to do. But most of the time, I think people like to decide what that's going to look like for them rather than Yoast decide that. So it's one of the first things that you can do. And other than that, just check that it's like the www, non-www, the trailing slash, and just make sure that there are A tags and href attributes with your internal links. There you go.
Okay, that's a good little roundup. What's your little 1 minute takeaway for us, Olesia?
I'd use content more, focus on content more, because content and technical, they go in line together. You should have it structured, and that's part of the technical part. You should have all the headings in place, all the titles, all the metas, use appropriate images, make sure that Google sees them and that they influence your code, your content in a positive way, and try to use Schema. If you can, try to make it compliant, and it will work for you. It's not ranking factor, but it helps so much to boards to understand what your page is about, and you'll never regret if you invest your time into it. optimizing images in the right way, schema and structured content will do the thing. Don't worry too much about those page speed issues unless they are too great. So I'd not invest too much time into that if you're limited on resources and they are working more or less, and your website is more or less good. And okay, that's okay. That may be enough.
Terrific. That's a great little roundup as well. So with that, I think we're out of time. I would just like to say thank you so much, Nick Ranger, for co-hosting. And yes, it's always a pleasure. And your knowledge and experience is phenomenal. Thank you so much for being on the show with us.
Oh, dude, it's coming from the legend himself, Mr. Peter Mead.
You're making me blush. Thank you. And also, just a shout out to SEMrush. And we're so thankful for SEMrush for providing us this platform and to really what they do for the whole community, for all of us to be able to jump on a free webinar like this and get this kind of information from top experts. So thank you so much, SEMrush.
Olesia as well.
And today, Olesia, what you've given us today, I think, is really giving us a lot to think about. The slides are amazing, and some of your little details that you've put in there, I'm really interested in. I'm going to rewatch this, and I'm going to be, just taking notice of some of those little details you've put in. Thank you so much for your time. And
thank you.
Little eggs, yeah. Thank you.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one. See you in the next one.
See you next time. Bye.
Bye.